Hollywood. Yes, Hollywood, USA, a place where dreams are born. And if you meet Puff Daddy or Harvey Weinstein, your dreams may die, along with your soul. But what if I told you that Hollywood was more than just a place where perverted movie directors and music producers made the dreams of young, unsuspecting men and women either come true or die? What if I told you it was more than that? What if I told you that the main purpose of Hollywood and all of our music and all of our movies and all of our TV shows and much of our pop culture served a deeper and more insidious purpose? What if I told you that the purpose of our entire pop culture framework was to propagandize the American public and make the world a safer place for American hegemony? Well, let's get into it, folks. It is a matter of public record that the Pentagon has had an entertainment liaison office since at least 1948. The CIA has had one since the late 90s. Now, it is known, and this is spoken about very openly, that the Pentagon, that the CIA often request script changes in exchange for advice, permission to use shooting locations, and the ability to use equipment such as aircraft carriers that often have a passive or largely apolitical role. So if these TV shows, if these movies, etc., want to appear more official, like say Iron Man or Black Panther, if they want to make their movies more believable, then they're going to have to ask the Pentagon for help. Now, I've talked about this before, how the Pentagon has been involved in thousands, repeat, thousands of movies and TV shows. Now, how do we know this? Because of files obtained through the U.S. Freedom of Information Act. Now, what did we learn from the U.S. Freedom of Information Act? We've learned that between 1911 and 2017, that more than 800 feature films received support from the government's Department of Defense. 800. Now, what are some of the movies that received help from the government's Department of Defense? Transformers, Iron Man, and I'll be back, The Terminator. It's even more on television, which is crazy because television has really only been a mainstream American phenomenon since the late 40s, early 50s. You know, TV sort of comes later than movies, but there are more TV shows than there are movies, so there's more TV shows that have been affected by the Pentagon's backing. And even some you wouldn't even suspect, like Ice Road Truckers. Army Wives, of course, that makes sense. Or the movie Flight 93, which was about the hijacked plane. Remember the hijacked plane that was crashed into, I believe, the Pentagon? No, not the Pentagon. That was the one that was crashed into a field in Pennsylvania. Remember my guy, Let's Roll? So anyway, the government has given assistance to these movies and TV shows that want to seem more authentic and more real. they also influenced TV shows like 24, Homeland, and NCIS. And it's not just the CIA either. It's the FBI, it's the White House. All of these people can call up movie studios and influence what is going on. Now, the CIA has assisted in 60 film and television shows since 1947 that we know of. That's what they say. This is a little bit lower than the Department of Defense, but it has still had a significant role nonetheless. The CIA has put considerable effort into even changing the way the public thinks about what the CIA is. That means it was entirely absent from cinematic and televisual culture until a fleeting image of a partially obscured plaque in Alfred Hitchcock's North by Northwest in 1959 happened. Now, obviously, over time, as the public learned more and more about the CIA, the FBI, and these sort of covert agencies, we learned about people like J. Edgar Hoover and his war against Martin Luther King and against the Civil Rights Movement, the Black Panthers, and all the leftist organizations in the 60s and 70s. And we learned about how, the CIA is responsible for so many coups and doing so many things that undermined governments and organizations that did not adhere to its worldview. So in the 70s, you started to see the CIA presented as a villain in movies like 3 Days of the Condor or The Parallax View. Now, after this, the CIA says, we can't have this. We cannot have this. And so they opened the Entertainment Liaison Office in 1996. And ever since then, they have been influencing many, many of the movies and TV shows that we watch and sort of turn our brains off to enjoy. The whole point is to suspend disbelief for a half an hour or hour for a TV show, for maybe 2 hours for a movie. And the CIA definitely takes advantage of that. Now, the most obvious, maybe the most obvious example would be the Al Pacino movie, The Recruit, or the Osama bin Laden assassination movie, Zero Dark 30. I remember I watched Zero Dark 30. And oh my God, the propaganda in that was so obvious. Usually Hollywood tries to be subtle with their propaganda, where they're programming the American public to support its reckless and often destructive foreign policy. But my God, Zero Dark 30 was so overtly propagandistic that I had to turn it off. I just couldn't. I couldn't even suspend disbelief and say, okay, this is Jessica Chastain. She's playing a character. It was overtly propagandistic. It was overtly about manufacturing consent for the endless war on terror that we have in this country, that we spend trillions of dollars supposedly fighting, often arming rebel groups and terrorist organizations that then eventually get sick of us and start killing American soldiers or start staging terror attacks in our country or in countries around the world. There were actually leaked private memos that indicated that both The Recruit and Zero Dark 30 were extremely heavily influenced by government officials. They both heightened or overly inflated real life threats and actually played down government malfeasance. And this is what they do. Like, one of my favorite examples of propaganda is Black Panther. And I remember when I was still on the radio with Jonathan Booz on Monday nights. Me and Jonathan actually helped put together a trip for young people to go see Black Panther when it first came out. We thought it would be a positive thing, a positive representation to see a movie about a black superhero fighting to defend his African country from, you know, a malicious outside influence. And so me, Jonathan, my mother, the head and CEO of the founder and CEO of the United Urban Network, we got a bunch of kids together. We got some buses, and we said we're going to take, I think it was about 40 kids to see Black Panther in the movie theaters. Now, I stopped giving Hollywood my money years ago. My stance is that Hollywood is the propaganda wing of the corporate state, and so I don't give Hollywood my money. But I thought this was a special occasion. We get to see a movie that may enforce a positive self-image within these young black kids. But something became very apparent in the movie, that the way that the movie was written was in a way that would vilify this black character named Eric Killmonger, who merely wanted to protect the well-being of black people universally, who wanted to use the vast, valuable wealth and resources of Wakanda to help black people around the world and empower black people around the world. Whereas T'Challa, played ably by the late, great Chadwick Boseman, wanted to keep Wakanda's resources and wealth a secret, and he also wanted to sort of keep things amongst the Wakandan people. Now, in this movie, there's a staged battle between T'Challa, played by Chadwick Boseman, and Eric Killmonger, played, I think, just as good or maybe even better by Michael B. Jordan. Michael B. Jordan legitimately defeats T'Challa in this battle for who gets to be the leader of Wakanda. And so Eric Killmonger is the legitimate leader of Wakanda. The legitimate leader. And he uses his Pan-Africanist ideology to immediately start helping black people resist racism and oppression around the world. Now, by any other metric, any real sensible, logical, moral metric, Killmonger is the good guy here. He wants to protect black people who have suffered generations of colonialism and slavery. Killmonger actually was raised in the United States. That's a part of his backstory. He was raised in Oakland, California. Ironically, or should I say coincidentally, the home of the Black Panthers and Bobby Seale, who we just opened the show with. He was raised in Oakland, which has a long history of fighting against racism and oppression, thanks to the Black Panthers and other institutional groups in the Bay Area. So Killmonger says, I've witnessed so much racism around Oakland and around the United States. Black people in Africa are being oppressed. Black people around the world are being oppressed. Let's use Wakanda's resources to empower black people. to stop the oppression. Now, again, this is the rightful leader of Wakanda. He won the battle with T'Challa fair and square. But is this presented as a moral victory or a type of revelation that will benefit black people or benefit the world as a whole? No. Killmonger is presented as the villain in this story because he wants to use Wakanda's resources to empower his own people who have been oppressed around the world, including in his hometown in Oakland, California, in the United States of America, the country that he was born in. That makes him the bad guy, according to this story, somehow. Now, at this point, there is a plot that is hatched with T'Challa's mother and his sister, along with a CIA agent. Yes, you heard it. A CIA agent. Yes, a CIA agent to restore T'Challa to his supposed rightful place as the ruler of Wakanda. So that's what they do. They resurrect T'Challa from whatever Valley of the Kings or whatever he's gone to after losing the fight to Killmonger. And T'Challa, aided and abetted by the CIA, overthrow the rightful owner, should I say the rightful leader of Wakanda, to restore T'Challa, who is now indebted to the CIA for helping him get back to where he belongs, supposedly belongs, as the leader of Wakanda. And again, we'll go back to withholding Wakanda's valuable vibranium resources that could, again, help everybody in the black diaspora resist generation after generation of racism and oppression. And so when you look at how these movies are presented, it's obvious that the CIA was saying, look, we get to be the good guy. We got to be the good guy here. When in actuality, by any other real moral standard, they are not the good guy. And they actually did what they do very often around the world, which is overthrow rightful, often democratically elected leaders like Patrice Lumumba and like Mossadegh in Iran, like my guy in Chile, to put who they replaced him with, Augusto Pinochet, who tried to use the resources of their country to benefit their own people. But instead, the United States government, the CIA, oftentimes the British MI6, and other Western elite intelligence agencies say, no, you don't get to use your country's resources to help your people. We, our Western countries, get to control your resources and make all the money in the world while your people stay poor. And so even something that seems as innocuous as a comic book movie turns into more propaganda. But it's not just the movies, folks. Nope. It's not just the movie. When we come back, I want to get to a break here, because I'm going to go deep into music. And it's not just the music that you think either. We'll be right back after these. WLTH 1370 AM. This is Straight Out of the Cannon. We'll be right back after these.